According to a new CNN poll conducted by SSRS, the Democratic Party's advantage over Republicans has essentially vanished. Additionally, a recent Reuters Ipsos poll found that Democrats have actually lost ground with millennials since 2016. This really shouldn't be the case. I mean, if they were an effective opposition party, they would be dominating right now. But that's not the case, so what's happening? Well, former Green Party presidential candidate Ralph Nader recently was on Ari Melber's show on MSNBC, and I don't know why they let him on. Maybe he snuck in there, but he was on there nonetheless, and he was talking about why Democrats are failing so hard, and he explained why they're so unpopular by dropping a huge truth bomb on them. Take a look.
I think the Democrat Party should take the third-party agenda away from it. They should have a living wage, just crack down on corporate crime, full Medicare for all. What do they expect to do? They have the third party supposed to help them? A democracy is only democracy if it has competitive elections, contested election, not a two-party duopoly dialing for the same corporate dollars. It is a First Amendment. That's where the political bigotry comes in. But you're right. There are a lot of other things. 300,000 Democrats in Florida in 2000 voted for Bush. You're going to blame the Green Party for that? The Secretary of State and Jeb Bush shenanigans, you know all about that with the ballot. You're going to blame the Green Party for that criminality? That's why I call it political bigotry. Democratic Party, stop scapegoating, look in the mirror, and ask yourself why you cannot landslide the worst, the most ignorant, the most corporate indentured, the cruelest Republican Party in history. Look in the mirror.
So I agree with everything he had to say there. Yeah, I mean, it's just common sense. He states here, the Democratic Party should take the third-party agenda away from it. That is only the most rational thing that progressives have been advocating the Democratic Party do since forever. Now, knee-jerk reactions to this will be, oh, well, you can't do that because the Green Party, they're too radical, but that's not actually true. The Green Party's agenda is very similar to Bernie Sanders' agenda, and if you look at Bernie Sanders' agenda and you disaggregate the issues he's talking about, and you look at public opinion polls, they're all populist ideas. His policies, most of them have a majority support among the American electorate, not just Democrats. So to say that the Green Party's agenda shouldn't be adopted by Democrats because it's too radical, that's absurd. The Green Party's agenda is more in line with what the Democratic Party's core base wants, but still, they don't do what their own voters want. And we always hear about the threat of the spoiler effect, but if people within the Democratic Party, including Democratic Party loyalists, were truly afraid of third parties ruining elections, then they would be pushing vociferously for ranked choice voting. But I don't ever see Democratic Party loyalists pushing for ranked choice voting. I only hear progressives and third-party voters advocating for ranked choice voting. So the people who scream the loudest about the potential for the spoiler effect and how harmful it is never say anything about ranked choice voting. Why is that? It's almost as if they're using vote shaming as a strategy to make sure that you vote Democrat no matter what, when that's just not a very smart thing to do if you are a voter. You have to make sure that you have leverage over the Democratic Party, and part of that leverage is forcing them to earn your vote every single time. Your vote should never be a given, but that's what the Democratic Party expects. They expect loyalty, and if you're not loyal, they shame you for it rather than looking in the mirror at why they failed you. Nader also states 300,000 Democrats in Florida voted for Bush, and you're going to blame the Green Party for that? He states, stop scapegoating, look in the mirror, and ask yourself why you cannot landslide the most corporate indentured, cruelest Republican Party in history. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. You can look at some pro-Obama districts that flipped this time. There were quite a bit that went Donald Trump, and that really speaks to the failure of Hillary Clinton in 2016 and the aggregate Democratic Party. It's not just Hillary Clinton. The whole party is a failure. Their model has been a failure. Hence why they lost more than 1,000 seats in state legislatures across the country. It's a fact. And also, we see a lot of attention being pinned to Jill Stein because she supposedly took votes away from Hillary Clinton, but nobody talks about the number of votes that Gary Johnson took away from Donald Trump. And in fact, he got a larger percentage of the vote share than Jill Stein. So he technically took more votes away from Donald Trump than Jill Stein supposedly took away from Hillary Clinton, and yet we still blame Jill Stein. maybe it's the case, just maybe, that the Democratic Party is incompetent. Now, one thing that really boggles my mind about individuals who state the fact that we live in a majoritarian winner-take-all system is that they don't look at the strategy and the strategic need for third parties to exist. The Green Party, and really third parties in general, the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, they act as a check on the two-party duopoly in this country. I mean, if you realize that we live in a two-party system, a majoritarian winner-take-all system, then use third parties to your advantage. Use third parties to recalibrate the bigger parties. So, I mean, as support for the Green Party grows, as they become an increasing threat to Democrats, well, Democrats should look at that and recalibrate to the needs of their left-wing base. But they're not doing that. Anytime they get out of touch and they're misaligned with voters, they blame voters. Rather than moving back to the left, they just blame voters and claim it's their fault. But really, I mean, if you are a competent candidate, you never have to worry about the Green Party threat. Nobody even knew that Jill Stein was running in 2012 because Obama, even though he's a flawed president and was a flawed candidate, he was still competent enough to run a campaign that excited the base. So we didn't even know that Jill Stein was running then. Most people didn't. I certainly didn't pay any attention to her then. So, I mean, we have to stop vote shaming. We have to stop blaming everyone but the cause, which is the Democratic Party's incompetence, which is largely contingent on their corporatism. If they didn't take corporate cash, then they could actually serve their voters. They could come out swinging for Medicare for all, campaign finance reform, but they don't want to do that. Why? Because they like that corporate cash. So if it means that they lose, they're fine with losing to Republicans, no matter how disgusting and morally reprehensible that party is or becomes, if it means they get to keep their corporate cash. So, I mean, what Ralph Nader says here is really important, and if they don't want to take heed to his advice, and not just what he's saying, but what progressives generally have been saying, then they have nobody to blame but themselves when they get wiped out. And really, we all want Democrats to beat Republicans, because even if Democrats suck, well, they're better than Republicans on a number of issues. Even though that line between Democrat and Republican is becoming increasingly blurred, objectively speaking, if you're liberal, you want Democrats to win and beat out Republicans. So we all want them to win. We want them to do better. It's easier to just support them if they become progressive again, but we know that they're not going to do that so long as the corporate cash keeps rolling in. So they're going to continue to lose, but they really don't care. They're not going to be introspective. They're not going to look in the mirror because they want the money. They care more about the money than votes. And that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.